Welcome to Farmtips Diary. Inflation doesn't just raise prices, it systematically destroys farm profitability by increasing costs faster than commodity prices, turning operations that were profitable into money-losing ventures within a single season, but across every inflationary period. Some farms not only survive but position themselves to thrive when conditions stabilize. This is the story of why certain farm expenses explode during inflation and the specific strategies that protect margins when every dollar counts, why some costs spike harder than others. Inflation doesn't affect all farm expenses equally. Understanding which costs surge most dramatically reveals where to focus defensive strategies. Fuel prices amplify during inflation because petroleum markets are globally interconnected and politically volatile. A farm paying $2 per gallon for diesel can face $5 within months during supply shocks. This isn't gradual inflation, but sudden multiplication, because farms use thousands of gallons annually for equipment, grain, drying, and irrigation. Fuel cost increases directly devastate budgets. The impact compounds through the supply chain. Higher fuel costs increase transportation expenses for all inputs and outputs. Fertilizer becomes more expensive partly because transporting it costs more. Hauling grain to market cuts into proceeds. Every farm input and activity involving movement becomes more costly when fuel prices spike. Fertilizer experiences the most dramatic inflation of major farm inputs. Nitrogen fertilizer production requires enormous natural gas inputs. When energy prices climb, fertilizer costs explode. Between 2020 and 2022, some nitrogen fertilizer prices tripled. Farms suddenly facing $300 per acre fertilizer costs versus $100 the previous year saw profit margins evaporate instantly. Fertilizer markets are also internationally concentrated. A few countries dominate production, making supply vulnerable to trade restrictions or geopolitical conflicts. Russia and Belarus export substantial potash and nitrogen. When sanctions or conflicts disrupt these sources, global prices spike regardless of local production. Farms cannot insulate themselves from international disruptions. Machinery costs climb for multiple reasons. Steel prices increase with general inflation. Electronic components face shortages and price increases. Labor costs at manufacturing facilities rise. But the biggest driver is that equipment purchases are discretionary and can be delayed, allowing manufacturers to maintain or raise prices without losing volume during shortages. Farmers needing equipment have limited negotiating power. Equipment repairs follow similar patterns. Parts become more expensive as manufacturers face higher material and labor costs. Dealerships raise service rates, but unlike new purchases, repairs are often urgent and non-discretionary. A broken planter during spring planting must be fixed regardless of cost. This necessity eliminates bargaining power. Land costs and rents increase during inflation as landowners demand compensation for declining purchasing power. Cash rents that were manageable become burdensome when raised 20 or 30%. For tenant farmers, rising rents directly squeeze margins while they have minimal ability to negotiate in tight land markets. Labor costs escalate as workers demand wages, keeping pace with inflation. Minimum wage increases, competition from other industries, and tightening labor markets all push agricultural wages upward. Farms are price takers in labor markets, unable to reduce wages even when farm income declines. The pattern is clear. Farms face cost increases on essential, non-discretionary inputs where they have minimal negotiating power or alternative sources. Meanwhile, commodity prices often lag inflation or remain volatile, creating the squeeze that defines inflationary periods for agriculture. Strategic timing and forward purchasing while farmers can't control inflation. Strategic timing of input purchases creates substantial savings during volatile price periods. This requires discipline and sometimes courage to act contrarily to emotions. Forward contracting inputs locks in prices before seasonal demand peaks or inflation accelerates. Fertilizer prices typically bottom in late summer and fall after spring application season. Farmers who purchase then for next year's crop save 15 to 30% compared to spring buyers when demand surges. This timing advantage compounds over multiple years. A Kansas wheat farmer maintains a spreadsheet tracking fertilizer prices weekly. He identifies typical price patterns and pulls the trigger when prices fall below the 5-year average. Over a decade, this discipline saved roughly $40 per acre annually compared to reactive spring purchases. Across 2,000 acres, that's $80,000 in cumulative savings from timing alone. Both fuel purchases during low price periods provide similar advantages. Farms with storage tanks can fill them when prices dip, protecting against subsequent spikes. A 10,000-gallon tank filled at 2.50 per gallon instead of 4.00 saves $15,000. While this requires upfront capital and storage infrastructure, the savings justify investment for operations using substantial fuel, parts, and supplies. Stockpiling before inflation accelerates prevents paying peak prices. Farms that maintain inventories of frequently needed parts, chemicals, and supplies avoid emergency purchases at inflated prices. This requires storage space and capital tied up in inventory, but the cost is typically lower than inflation-driven price increases. The psychological challenge is committing capital when prices seem high historically, but are likely to go higher. During the 2021 fertilizer price climb, farmers who bought at $600 per ton felt that was expensive. 6 months later, prices exceeded $1,200. Those who waited to see if prices would decline paid double. Overcoming the hesitation to commit when prices are already elevated requires discipline and market awareness. Seasonal buying patterns for machinery optimize around dealer incentives and year-end inventory clearing. Equipment dealers offer best prices in late fall and winter when demand is lowest. Farmers who plan ahead and purchase during slow periods save thousands compared to emergency spring purchases. This requires foresight about equipment needs rather than waiting until something breaks. The risk of forward purchasing is that prices could decline after committing, creating regret. However, the asymmetric risk during inflationary periods favors early action. The downside of prices declining 10% is much smaller than the upside of avoiding 50 to 100% increases. Conservative forward purchasing of 30 to 50% of needs balances risk while capturing substantial protection. The collective buying advantage. Individual farms have little market power when negotiating with input suppliers, but farmers organizing collectively achieve volume discounts and favorable terms that dramatically improve economics. Farmer cooperatives pooling purchases negotiate bulk pricing unavailable to individuals. A cooperative representing 50 farms buying 5,000 tons of fertilizer obtains substantially better pricing than a single farm buying 100 tons. Suppliers offer discounts for guaranteed volume and simplified logistics of single deliveries rather than many small orders. A Midwest cooperative serving 200 grain farms negotiated fertilizer contracts, saving members an average of $35 per ton compared to retail prices across an average 500 acres and 300 pounds per acre application. That's $2,600 per farm annually. The cooperative membership fee of $200 delivers 30-to-1 return just on fertilizer savings before considering other benefits. Seed purchasing through cooperatives similarly achieves savings of 10 to 20% on identical products. Suppliers provide volume discounts that cooperatives pass to members. Additionally, cooperatives can contract directly with seed companies, eliminating dealer markups. The savings per farm are often several $1,000s annually. Chemical buying groups form specifically to pool purchases for herbicides, insecticides, and fungicides. These informal groups, sometimes just neighboring farms, combine orders to reach volume discount thresholds. A farm needing 100 gallons alone pays retail pricing. 10 farms each, needing 100 gallons together, negotiate 1,000-gallon bulk pricing, saving 15 to 25%. Fuel cooperatives allow farms to purchase at wholesale or near wholesale prices. Members collectively contract with suppliers, sometimes owning storage and distribution infrastructure. This eliminates multiple retail markups, saving 20 to 40 cents per gallon for farms using 10,000 gallons annually. That's $2,000 to $4,000 in savings. Equipment cooperatives share ownership of expensive machinery that individual farms use only occasionally. Instead of each farm owning a $300,000 combine used 3 weeks yearly, 10 farms jointly own it for $30,000 each and schedule usage. This reduces per farm capital requirements by 90% while providing access to quality equipment. The challenges of collective buying include coordination overhead, scheduling conflicts for shared equipment, and free rider problems, where some members benefit without contributing fairly. Successful cooperatives establish clear rules, professional management, and enforcement mechanisms, ensuring equitable participation. The broader benefit is that cooperatives give farmers market power. Suppliers who can ignore individual small farmers must negotiate seriously with organizations representing hundreds of farms and millions in annual purchases. This power balance improvement can be as valuable as direct cost savings. Real farms managing through inflation abstract strategies matter less than how actual operations implement them under real constraints. These examples reveal practical application of cost management during recent inflation. An Iowa corn and soybean operation faced fertilizer costs doubling in 2022. Instead of applying traditional rates, they invested in precision soil testing every 2.5 acres rather than whole field averages. The testing revealed substantial variability. Some areas needed full applications, others needed minimal inputs. Variable rate application reduced total fertilizer use by 28% while maintaining yields. The testing cost $8,000, but saved $65,000 in fertilizer. They continued precision testing going forward, turning a crisis response into permanent efficiency. A California vegetable farm formed a buying group with 5 neighbors after energy costs spiked. Collectively, they contracted 50,000 gallons of diesel and 500 tons of fertilizer. Volume discounts saved each farm $12,000 to $18,000 depending on size. The coordination required monthly meetings and careful tracking of orders and payments, but the savings justified the effort. The group continued operating after crisis passed, expanding to include seed and chemical purchases. A Wisconsin dairy that was break-even before inflation cut costs ruthlessly when margins went negative. They analyzed every expense, eliminating waste in areas that didn't directly impact milk production. Switching to generic medications saved $8,000 annually. Negotiating feed contracts with multiple suppliers rather than using a single source reduced feed costs by 4% or $35,000 yearly. Reducing equipment idling saved $6,000 in fuel. Collectively, dozens of small cuts totaled $75,000, returning the dairy to profitability without reducing production. A Texas cotton farmer facing fuel costs exceeding $4 per gallon converted to minimum tillage practices requiring 60% less fuel per acre. The transition required learning new techniques and accepting more weeds initially, but fuel savings of $25 per acre across 1,500 acres totaled $37,500 annually. 3 years later, yields matched previous tillage systems, while fuel costs remained dramatically lower. The inflation crisis forced a practice change that became permanent efficiency improvement. An Oregon fruit farm installed solar panels in 2020 when financing rates were favorable. When electricity rates increased 40% in 2022 and 2023, their costs stayed fixed. The solar installation cost $180,000 after incentives, but saves $32,000 annually at current rates versus grid power. Payback will occur in 6 years, with decades of stable energy costs ahead. The timing was fortunate, but the willingness to invest during uncertain times positioned them favorably. These examples share themes. They acted decisively rather than waiting. They invested in efficiency even when capital was tight. They sought collective solutions when possible, and they used crisis as opportunity to identify and eliminate waste that they would have overlooked during easier times. Technology as early warning and defense. Modern technology provides farms unprecedented ability to track costs, identify waste, and anticipate inflation impacts before they fully manifest. Farm management software tracking every expense by category reveals exactly where money goes. Many farmers discover they're spending far more in certain areas than realized. Fuel costs that seemed reasonable in aggregate reveal waste when broken down by equipment and activity. This granular visibility enables targeted cost reduction rather than across-the-board cuts. Benchmark comparisons against similar farms identify unusual expenses. If comparable, operations spend $40 per acre on repairs, but your farm spends $70, that flags investigation opportunities. Perhaps you're deferring replacement too long, operating inefficiently, or paying too much for service. Benchmarking creates competitive pressure toward efficiency. Budgeting tools using current input prices project total costs for upcoming seasons. This early warning allows adjusting plans before committing to crops that won't be profitable. A farm might discover that projected corn costs exceed likely revenue by $50 per acre. That insight enables switching to soybeans, reducing acreage, or forward contracting corn at profitable prices before planting. Price tracking applications monitor commodity and input markets in real time. Farmers receive alerts when fertilizer or fuel prices hit target levels, enabling opportunistic purchases during temporary dips. These tools eliminate the need for constant manual monitoring while ensuring no opportunities are missed. Precision agriculture technology reduces input waste dramatically. Variable rate application, GPS guidance preventing overlap, and targeted pest control all cut costs without sacrificing yields. A farm reducing fertilizer use by 10% through precision application saves $30 per acre or $30,000 across 1,000 acres. The technology investment pays for itself in 1 to 3 years through waste elimination. Yield mapping combined with input cost tracking calculates profitability by field and even by zone within fields. Farms discover that some areas consistently lose money, even in good years. This insight supports decisions to stop farming marginal ground, redirecting resources to profitable areas. The technology makes invisible subsidies between profitable and unprofitable areas visible, enabling rational decisions. Automated record keeping reduces administrative burden while ensuring accurate documentation for tax purposes. Precise expense records enable capturing all legitimate deductions, reducing tax liability by thousands of dollars annually for many farms. The time savings also free farmers to focus on operations rather than paperwork. Remote monitoring of equipment, fuel consumption, idle time, and efficiency identifies waste invisible to operators. A tractor idling excessively or operating inefficiently burns thousands in unnecessary fuel annually. Telematics revealing these patterns enables coaching operators or adjusting practices to eliminate waste. The strategic insight is that technology isn't expense but investment in efficiency. The farms weathering inflation best are often those that embrace technology enabling waste identification and elimination. The initial costs are recovered rapidly through operational improvements that persist long after inflation moderates. Recap: inflation hits fuel, fertilizer, and machinery hardest because these markets are globally interconnected, energy-intensive, and often allow farms face cost increases on non-discretionary inputs where they lack negotiating power. Strategic timing through forward contracting during low demand periods saves 15 to 30% on inputs. Collective buying through cooperatives achieves volume discounts of 10 to 25% unavailable to individuals while providing market power. Real operations manage inflation through precision agriculture, reducing waste, forming buying groups that aggregate purchasing power, cutting non-essential costs ruthlessly, and investing in efficiency improvements during crisis. Technology enables tracking every expense, benchmarking against peers, projecting budgets before committing to crops, monitoring markets for buying opportunities, eliminating input waste through precision application, and identifying unprofitable activities. The farms that thrive during inflation act early, invest strategically, and use crises to permanently improve efficiency rather than just surviving until conditions improve. If these inflation-fighting strategies gave you actionable ideas for protecting your farm's margins, give this video a like and share it with anyone facing cost pressures. Subscribe to Farmtips Diary for more practical insights on building resilient, profitable operations. Hit that notification bell so you never miss strategies that could improve your farm's financial health. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.